And welcome back to the show. You just got done hearing my talk with Julian of Hangman's Chair, talking about the brand new album A Loner, which is available now through Nuclear Blast. And that's 3 of the albums I will be talking about in the album review section of the show this week. And between this week, last week, the previous week, February has been an incredible month for heavy releases. And these 6 albums here are great examples why going pretty much everywhere that you would want to go in the heavier territories. Whether you like it more tech, whether you like it more brutal, whether you like that 80s style, whether you want it doomy, whether you want it more modern. I got it all here, and let's talk about it. First of all, I'm talking about the band Allegaeon with their brand new album, Damnum. And seeing the metamorphosis of this band has been incredible because they did start off as a very technical band, a little bit more deathcore-ish, I would say. Maybe that's not exactly right, but, they were much more on the brutal aspect of things. Then they eventually started to let their prog colors fly, which I appreciated so much more, and you started to hear more of what the band was really, truly capable of over the next few albums, and here we are now with Damnum, and it's a nice little mix of both. I mean, there's some great proggy moments going on here, some nice clean vocals going on, but overall, it's a much heavier album than what we've experienced from the band in quite some time. The production is just so nice and slick. The songwriting is just incredible. It just walks that really great fine line of all these different styles of the heavier sides of metal and prog and technical ability, but it's all concise. It all makes sense. And it's just great to see an album like this from the band in 2022. And of course, they're going to soon be going on tour with Omnium Gatherum and Black Crown Initiate, which is so cool to see them on a tour like that, especially in a main support slot. Because I'm so used to seeing these guys usually on the bottom rung of a tour, but now seeing them getting to that main support slot and hopefully eventually getting to that headlining spot. It's so great to see that. And if you've never checked out the band before, I think this is a great starter point, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Next up is the debut solo album from Corpsegrinder. Yes, George Corpsegrinder Fisher of Cannibal Corpse has finally released his very first solo album. Of course, under his moniker, Corpsegrinder. And a few weeks back, I heard someone describe this album as if Jamie Josta wanted to make a Cannibal Corpse album. And I find that to be such an apt description, because it does contain much of the death metal that you would hear from a band like Cannibal Corpse, but it's also got some hardcore flavoring going on there, which you wouldn't normally expect. Whereas Cannibal Corpse, of course, is just known for being so fast, so brutal. And of course, when you have master musicians like Alex Webster playing bass, you're going to have very technical moments that are going on there as well. With this album, it can get a little technical, but it's so much more focused on the songwriting, making sure that the songs are just what they need to be. I mean, you don't even hear blast beats on this album until about a quarter of the ways in. And there's some very, very slow moments that just put like other punishing death and hardcore to shame. And it just shows that brutal can be whatever you want it to be, really. It can be as fast as possible, it can be as slow as possible. We all have our own definition of what brutal can really mean. But I think it's a very good description of what this album is all about. It's brutal on so many different sides. If you like to slam in the pit, this is an album for you. If you like the circle pits, this is for you. If you just want some heavy, hardcore infused death metal, Corpsegrinder has you covered here. And the fact this is one of the shining albums on a brand new label like Perseverance, it kind of perseveres and shines some new lights on what all the different sides of what Jamie Josta of Hatebreed is all about when it comes to his musical choices and what he wants to promote. So, since he had his touch on this album, I'm very curious to see what else he can do outside of his main bands like Hatebreed and Kingdom of Sorrow. But with Corpsegrinder, yeah, some killer stuff. Now to talk about the 3 albums that I went deep into on the show this week. But of course, if you're just checking out the YouTube version, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So let's go and continue in that alphabetical order, talking about Dagoba and By Night. I really do feel like this is the best Dagoba album to date. I love what Shotter and company has done over the past couple decades, and just seeing where they started off with their debut and now where they are now with By Night, and just seeing how everything has just been so refined to make such killer, catchy, memorable songs that are so dense at the same time. I don't mean dense like stupid, I mean dense like it's so full and thick. And when you peel apart the layers like an onion, you start to see all these different things that you may not notice. Like, you're noticing things in the rhythm section you may not have noticed before. You may notice some synth parts that you've never noticed before. There's so many different layers to Dagoba, and when you're doing something more of the modern metal tinges, like what Dagoba has really crafted into their own, it's just so rewarding to listen to, especially if you can appreciate music on a deeper level than just hearing the songs on a base level, because that deep dive into a band like this is so worth it. And when you write things as catchy as Dagoba does, it really makes you wish that they were a bigger presence over here in America, and you wish that they were on American Top 40 Rock Radio, which they definitely have some songs on this album where that should happen. And who knows, maybe one day that could happen. It's never too late. But until then, if you like things that with a little bit of electronica, a little bit of symphonics, a little bit of metal, and just being able to find a great hybrid for every different song, Dagoba is the band for you, and I highly recommend checking out By Night. Next up, we got Hangman's Chair with A Loner, and this album has been crushing my soul lately. Although it's not the most soul-crushing album I've heard in 2022 so far as sonically, or production, or overall songwriting, it hits me on a personal level that I'm not sure many other albums are going to be able to come close to hitting me this year, just like. As you heard with my interview with Julian, it really tackles about what isolation feels like, what depression feels like, what mental health struggles feel like, and sometimes being alone is the answer. As much as that sounds like that's a horrible thing to do, sometimes being alone is the right way to go, and I totally get it here. When you listen to these songs, it has like a great atmosphere behind it that is not always tackled in doom metal, which is so funny because with doom metal there's so much space to be able to create that landscape, but this is a different kind of atmosphere. Where I'd say if you like a band like Pallbearer, for example, Hangman's Chair would be right up your alley. Where you can hear kind of the influences of maybe like a little more of the stoner side of doom metal, but it's so much more focused on just pure, clean vocaled doom metal, that classic doom metal. And I don't mean like Candlemass. Like I said, I think Pallbearer is a good example of that, where it's not as cheesy overall. I mean, I love Candlemass, but come on, they have some cheesy stuff. Whereas with Hangman's Chair, with A Loner, it feels real. It's real emotion that's coming out, and between all the songs that are shown off here, you just see all these different sides of mental health struggles, and especially if you can relate or if you're suffering yourself, this is a pretty good soundtrack that really showcases everything off. And I keep listening to it. It strikes a chord with me in a way that just hits me so hard. And I hope others, if they choose to check it out, will be feeling the same way, because this album is so damn good. And Hangman's Chair deserves that promotion, so I hope you go and check it out. And finally, of the 3 interviews that I've done for the show this week, Manic Sinners with King of the Badlands, their debut album. And you don't normally go to Romania when you're thinking about 80s infused hard rock and heavy metal, but sometimes it's the countries you don't think about that puts out some killer music. That's why it's so important to be able to expand your mind. Manic Sinners is a perfect example of that. These guys coming together with that common goal of being able to wear their influences on their sleeves, doing the music that they enjoy, that 80s hard rock, 80s heavy metal, a little bit of 90s thrown in there as well, but just knowing who they are and writing killer music surrounded around that. It's got the 80s AOR feel behind it too, because there's some great melodic moments in there that if you enjoy AOR, this will be right up your alley. If you want some heavier stuff, like even getting closer into like Slayer tinges, Manic Sinner's got you covered there too. But if you just like that 80s metal sound and you want to hear it updated just enough for 2022, Manic Sinners has released that album. And when there's so many dark things going on in the world right now, sometimes you just want a nice little throwback just to escape for a little bit, because you know the world's in really rough shape right now. I mean, not just with the pandemic, now seeing that the world might be going into World War III right now, and I don't just mean the WCW pay-per-view, it's scary times, really scary times. So why not just be able to find an album where you can escape all of that for a while? King of the Badlands is that album, and if you need that escape, they've given it to you, and it's absolutely worth your time. And finally, why not just continue on with the soul crushing? If Hangman's Chair wasn't soul crushing enough, Shape of Despair have decided to come back and release one of their darkest albums to date with Return to the Void. Shape of Despair has been known for their Finnish funeral doom metal, that great death doom sound, nice female vocals always attached to it. The kind of band where if Draconian is just a little too happy for you, Shape of Despair is that band that will just tear you apart if you let it. And this is a soul-torturing album, and I love it for that reason. It's so dark, it's so heavy, it hits on topics that just, if you really pay attention to it, it's just gonna grab hold of you and not let go. The production on here is so perfect for their style. Everyone is just doing exactly what they need to in this band, and you know, it's been a little bit since there's been a new Shape of Despair record, so hearing something like Return to the Void, yeah, I mean, this is a rough album if you're going through some rough times right now, although it could be exactly what you need as well. But just know this is far from a rainbows and sunshine album. This could be one of the darkest albums of 2022, and it's hard to get darker than Finnish funeral death doom that Shape of Despair have mastered so well. And I know I'm going to be listening to this album more. I've really been appreciating funeral doom metal so much more lately, and just doom metal in general, and I need an album like this right now, just like Hangman's Chair. I need an album like Return to the Void right now for my personal being, and if you can relate to that in any way, or if you just enjoy some killer doom metal, check out Shape of Despair. And with that, thank you so very much for checking out my album reviews. If you're checking this out on YouTube, I highly recommend you check out the podcast as well too, which of course is now on YouTube, but I would really like you to be able to check out the full show, check out the interviews, check out what I'm going to be talking about next. There's a lot to dissect with Heavy Debriefings, and if you're only coming in for the album reviews, I hope you dug this. Until next time.